everyone. Good morning and welcome to First Things First. I'm Jenna Wolfe. That guy right over there is the Hall of Famer Cris Carter. This is Nick Wright. We got a great show for you today. Baker Mayfield just got a big boost from OBJ. That boost, availability. Tom Brady just lost another huge piece on offense, but we got to start with more fallout from Andrew Luck's retirement. So the Colts begin football life without Andrew Luck this week, but with Jacoby Brissett. Brissett now the team's starting quarterback moving forward. Keep in mind, Luck has been hurt the last few months, and head coach Frank Reich says Brissett's taken around 1,200 snaps with the first team this offseason as a result. And as you'd imagine, all eyes now focused on the new starting signal caller in Indy.
It's been a roller coaster of emotions. And the main thing is just, not being able to see Andrew every day. And that's, today was kind of weird walking in and not seeing him, but, that's the thing to deal with. I was shocked. Which I'm sure everybody is. Y'all wouldn't be here if y'all weren't shocked either, but I was shocked. And then, we had a long conversation, and it was just, some emotions obviously going back and forth, but when you sit down and you talk to him and you understand his decision, and like I said, it's like one of my good friends, so it's tough, but I'm sure both of us will deal with it.
Jacoby has this presence about him that it's just not all about him. He's in it for the other guys, and he genuinely is about bringing out the best in other people. You just feel that, you see that, the guys know that. I could see it instantly. Seeing him with the guys out on the field. We are in good hands with Jacoby Brissett as our quarterback.
Cece, I'll start with you. So much of this Colts offense was built around Andrew Luck and what he was good at and his tools and what he could do. How much of the Colts offense now changes with Jacoby Brissett at the helm?
Well, when you have someone like Andrew Luck, he doesn't have a weakness. Maybe early in his career, holding on to the ball more and allowing plays to develop down the field as if, I'm going to stay in there and hold the ball. That's probably the only weakness that he had early in his career, the reason why he took so many hits. But when you can drive the ball deep down the field, when you are a great athlete, now regardless of how you look at Jacoby Brissett, typically when you look at African-American quarterbacks, you think they're better athletes. He is not the athlete that Andrew Luck was. Andrew Luck basically has the same specs, the same marks at the combine in Indianapolis that Cam Newton has. Cam's a little bit taller, all right, and his frame is built a little bit different. But if you look at the broad jump, look at the 40-yard dash, if you look at the explosive things, he's in the same breath as Cam Newton. So anyone that knows that would know, no, I can't have the quarterback that I can depend on his overall athleticism. So Jacoby, he can throw the ball down the field. He's not as accurate as Andrew Luck is, but how can we expect that? Pro Football Focus had Andrew Luck ranked the 5th best quarterback in the NFL, ahead of Matty Ice, ahead of Russell Wilson, guys like that. So guys like that just aren't normal. So for us to think, now they have to do, what do we have? What are his strengths? And we have to develop the rest of the team. Last year, Marlon Mack was among 3 players in the NFL to average 75 yards and had 10 touchdowns. Can I get that number to around 90? Doesn't seem like a huge jump.
It's a big jump.
But with that offensive line and his durability, I believe you lean on that offensive line, lean on the running game. You're skilled guys. You have a great skilled group led by T.Y. Hilton. You can't expect to have the same type of chemistry that T.Y. had with Andrew. Eric Ebron coming off a Pro Bowl season at tight end. Paris Campbell, the 2nd-round pick from Ohio State, adds a little speed, adds a little flair to that offense. And you have Devin Funchess as the big, stationary, move-to-change target. So he has, as a quarterback, taken over a team. He has a lot of very, very good weapons, and I also believe in institutional talent. I believe that Frank Reich is the right guy to be grooming him because I believe he's underrated as a coach, underrated as a play caller.
The best thing Jacoby Brissett has going for him is the offense he will take the field with is going to be better with better personnel than the offense Andrew Luck had on the field last year. The offensive line in large part's the same, but when Quentin Nelson is a rookie, he was very good by the end of the year. He was pretty damn good at the beginning. We would expect him to be even better in year 2. You mentioned the 2 wide receivers. By the midway point of last season, the number 2 receiver on the Colts was Dontrell Inman. Now the number 2 receiver is Devin Funchess, with Paris Campbell potentially jostling for that position. Additionally, that Nick Sirianni, who was with the Patriots for a long time, he changed their offensive philosophy in this regard along with Frank Reich. Get the ball out quick, yards after catch. That's where I think Paris Campbell could really help him. If he can catch the ball in space, short crossing routes, and then go out and run. And that is where Jacoby Brissett is going to need assistance, because what we saw in his one season as a full-time starter, he held on to the ball way too long. Now, part of that was systemic in Indy with the previous regime, where they had more dropbacks where you're going to hold on to the ball long, where they didn't emphasize getting the ball out of your hands. And some of it was Jacoby as a young quarterback. But the reason that I am still bullish, not nearly as bullish, but still bullish on the Colts, is we saw enough things from them throughout last season. Improvement that was Andrew Luck, not dependent on him. The defense allowed 34 points 4 times in the first 6 games when they went 1-5. They allowed 0 the rest of the season. That, you would imagine, will continue. I think their pass rush will be a little bit better this year with the addition of Justin Houston to go opposite Jabal Sheard as opposed to what they had last season. And you mentioned the skill position guys. Marlon Mack, to me, is the X factor. 90 yards a game would be, that's a 1,400-yard season. That would be extraordinary. I think if they could get the same production they got last year, where he's 1 of 3 backs, 75 yards per game. That's a 1,200-yard season, 10 touchdowns. I think that would be enough, assuming the offensive line is what I think almost everyone believes it can be, and that the defense continues the trajectory it was on last season. Even those defensive numbers a little inflated last year because of the competition, we still saw the buildings of at least a solid defensive front.
You mentioned Frank Reich earlier. How many coaches in the league are better set up to put together an offensive game plan for a backup quarterback than Frank Reich, who already did this, who was in Philadelphia as their offensive coordinator, who put together a game plan for a Nick Foles when Carson Wentz went out? Talk to me about Frank Reich.
Yeah, I think that if I could pick a pre-career before being a head coach, it would be being a backup quarterback in the NFL for a long time. A guy has seen some starts, but he sat behind a guy who was a proven, because I just believe the information and the coaches teach them different. They expect that guy to teach other people. And what Frank Reich did in Philadelphia with Nick Foles, we saw Nick Foles a totally different person in that playoff run. And this year, Jenna, I'm glad you asked about Frank. This year we have 15 new play callers in the NFL. So we talking about guys trying to cut their teeth, guys trying to rebuild their reputation and working with new personnel. So I like the combination of Frank Reich and Jacoby Brissett. That's the reason why they traded for him in 17. And I don't think it's fair to put those stats he had on him in 17. Rob Trzcinski was the offensive coordinator then. He's out of football and hadn't got a job since then. That speaks for itself. And the kid was sacked 10% of the time. He dropped back in that 2017.
It's impossible to
It's
be
a rebuilt offensive line. All the other personnel outside of T.Y. Hilton, it has changed. So I believe we should see great success, and we're going to see Frank Reich be one of the elite coaches in the NFL. 2
quick notes. One is I mentioned Nick Sirianni, the offensive coordinator. I transposed Jenna's favorite team, the Patriots, with my team, the Chiefs. He was with the Chiefs when he came up in football, not the Patriots. So I want to clarify that. The other one is when we talk about the Colts and their ability to win this year, it is, what is the first thing you have to do, see? Win your division.
Yes.
And when you look at the AFC South, who's the even above average offense in the AFC South? I'm very confident it's not Tennessee. We will see what Jacksonville, even with an upgrade at quarterback.
Yeah, it can only be the Texans.
Right. Texans is the best hope, but the Texans right now are dealing with massive questions on the offensive line, a major injury to their running back, more lingering injuries with the wide receiver core that, aside from DeAndre Hopkins, has been in flux for years, and a quarterback in Deshaun Watson, who I think is awesome, but is going to be running for his life all year. So you're not going to need to be a top 5 offense to be the best offense in that division this year.
That's a good point. If Brissett's going to pick a division to try to shine in, it's definitely going to be that one. All right, take a break. Coming up, will Ezekiel Elliott be a Cowboy for life? Next on FS1, and you can always check us out on the Fox Sports channel on SiriusXM. We'll be right back. Back here, first things first. We'll get to Ezekiel Elliott in a second, but first, Canadian Football League Hamilton Tiger Cats wideout Jalen Acklin with a great adjustment and catch.
See, can you get up and run in the CFL, or is it college rules there?
No, NFL rules.
Well, then he should have got up and run there.
I think a knee might have touched him when he was on the ground. Watch him when the guy goes over top of him. Right there. He touched him on the way past.
Okay. All right.
That's against Duran's team.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, he plays for BC.
More
They're
from
not
the
doing too well
CFL
this year.
here.
That's why they haven't made this.
Montreal Alouettes receiver DeVere Posey diving backwards to make this grab.
Buckeyes, we everywhere. DeVere Posey out of Cincinnati, Ohio.
Yep.
Great track star out of high school. Started at The Ohio State. Drafted in the NFL.
Who
Houston
don't you
Texans.
know, see?
Didn't work out for him in Houston, man. But good for him carving out something in the CFL.
Yeah, big-time play. One of the best receivers they have in the CFL.
Fine little high school football down in Virginia. Benedictine Prep quarterback Jay Wolfe with an incredible 39-yard touchdown run.
Oh!
That's 5 of them.
Trust me on this.
Oh,
This
we
is a
trust
video
you,
game.
Then he fumbled at the end, though. Oh, fumbled in the end zone. That's a touchdown. Okay.
Kind of like those uniforms.
There we go. I like the high school highlights, man. I love high school football highlights because you don't get great video. You got the sideline angle. I love it.
All right, moving on. As the Dallas Cowboys inch their way closer to the start of the season, they do so without Ezekiel Elliott, their star stud, everything running back, still waiting for his new deal. Haven't heard much from Zeke of late, but yesterday an article came out from an interview back in July before his holdout began, where he said this: I love playing for the Dallas Cowboys. I love the organization, my teammates. I do want to be a Cowboy for the rest of my life, and hopefully that is a possibility. But even Emmitt Smith, the greatest running back ever, ended up going to play a couple of years for another organization. So it's just the nature of the game, but I want to be a Dallas Cowboy for as long as I can. See, given that, you think Zeke still feels this way more than a month after making those comments?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that he's strong in his conviction as far as he's outplayed his contract, even though he's a top 5 pick. He wants to reset the market for running backs. He believes that running backs have been disregarded, undervalued. And in the last several years, you have seen with him, Todd Gurley, and Saquon last year, as far as the Giants, if you have a featured running back, he is worth the money. He's worth that type of draft pick. But he's got the right perspective. Even Evan Smith had to go somewhere at the end of his career. A lot of players do. And now with the ever-changing, with the salary cap, with the money available. But it would be great for him if he had the brand of playing for the Ohio State and then playing for the Dallas Cowboys and called it a career. He'd make a lot of money just on those branding power of those two institutions. Ohio State being one of the most popular college football brands, and of course the Dallas Cowboys being one of the most popular brands in sports around the world. Of course, yes, that's what he'd like to do, but the reality is ultimately you probably have to go somewhere else. If you're going to have a long career, typically it's going to happen at the end. But right now he should want to be a Dallas Cowboy. It's great. They have a great venue to be able to play their games. They got a good young roster. They got a quarterback that really, really needs them. So the fit is more there than like any other place that I believe that he'll be able to be where we have all these throwers in the league.
And a really good young offensive line that he could grow with and play with throughout his career. You're not going to find a better, for a running back, offensive line situation and ownership situation, I would imagine, than the Dallas Cowboys, especially a running back who a couple times already has shown up in Roger Goodell's office. Jerry Jones, these tough contract negotiations notwithstanding, goes to the wall for his players once they are in the fold. He's already shown that with Zeke, how upset he was with the league when Zeke did get suspended. The Cowboys taking no punitive action against Zeke from a team perspective once he got out of, kind of wiggled his way out of the latest fracas from this summer. So, of course, this makes sense. And the question is, how long does Zeke realistically think he's going to play? I would imagine right now they're trying to negotiate a 4-year contract extension. That would take him through his 9th NFL season. So we're talking about year 10 if he gets this contract done before he would be a free agent. And while I understand, and I remember Emmitt playing those 2 years, I believe, for the Arizona Cardinals, Emmitt didn't have to finish his career somewhere else. He did because he played even by older school standards, a ridiculously long time. He was already the NFL's all-time rushing leader and then decided, I want to keep going, and more power to him for doing that. But it's not as if Emmett was forced out of Dallas early. Emmett was no longer the player he once was, but still had something left and said, if I can keep playing football, I'm going to keep playing football as long as I possibly can. So I get why Zeke would want to do this. And in this interview, well, without saying it, I think he is saying it, he's acknowledging some of the points Stephen and Jerry have made, which is there are some benefits to being a Dallas Cowboy, particularly being a lifelong Dallas Cowboy, that other franchises can't offer you. It's why Cris talks about all the time. Troy, Emmett, and Michael Irvin all still make their homes in Dallas, that the cachet of that organization and being considered a lifelong Cowboy, even if at the end of your career you catch on somewhere else. Like, nobody cares that Jerry Rice played for the Seahawks and the Raiders. Right. You think of him as a San Francisco. Nobody thinks of Cris Carter as anything other than an Eagle briefly in the beginning, but a Viking. People think of you as a Viking even though you played with Miami.
We had a brief moment with the Dolphins with that new helmet and everything.
Right.
Someone else in my body.
It didn't work out, but nobody. And so you see, who did Hakeem Olajuwon play for? The Rockets, not the Raptors, even though technically he did. So the last couple years of career notwithstanding, I do believe Zeke wants to be a Dallas Cowboy through the prime and after the prime of his career, and I think that's what he's communicating.
Zeke knows what the Dallas Cowboys offer him as far as a home for the next couple years, but I'm sure Jerry Jones also knows what he gets from Zeke. This is, as we call him, a once-in-a-lifetime running back. I mean, one of these really, really great athletes who you know is going to deliver, who you know has been a winner for you. How much is this Jerry's pride? He knows football. You talk about how much he knows the game. He knows how much he needs him. Is there a little bit of pride that's sort of working its way in here?
Well, I think you don't become a multi-billionaire without some type of pride. But Jerry will tell you, I love the game. At the beginning of the day and the end of the game, he loves football. It's been part of his blood for a long, long time. And he feels like he understands football. But the one thing he understands is the product. And the product he's got out there on the field, he realized the best player is still in Mexico. And their chances, if they want to host the Lombardi Trophy, they have no chances without Ezekiel. Jerry knows that. He hadn't expressed that verbally, but he knows that. So I believe that a deal will get worked out because Jerry is a tough negotiator, and he's willing to stare down anyone, and that's what they're going to have, a showdown, stare down, there in Dallas.
And real quick, I want to revisit something you said yesterday. You put basically 1 week from today as the drop-dead date for this to get done for Zeke to be able to play week 1. Correct? That
yes.
If it's not done by Tuesday of the first week of the season, he wouldn't be able to play week 1. Jen and I were discussing this before the show. Can you just explain to the audience again why you think even that position of running back couldn't sign on a Thursday night and play that Sunday?
Well, from a game plan standpoint, they're putting in the game plan on Sunday. They're going to trim down their roster Sunday afternoon. I think the league mandate is that day. And then you start to get your practice squad, and you really start trying to concentrate. How can we win this first game, which happens to be a divisional game? Our defensive line is shorthanded. How can I put together a game plan for those 65 offensive plays? And you can only put in plays that the players that are there. You can't have the coaches on a Sunday say, we're getting ready to play the Giants a week from today, and let's put in 25 plays for Ezekiel Elliott. Are you crazy? You are wasting time. You have to be able to put in stuff that you know the next day, because typically you have an abbreviated off day, which is typically Tuesday. But on that first week of the season, man, that ain't no off day. Like, you going in to work on that day, and they put the game plan in, and then they reveal the whole game plan on Wednesday. You get the big days a week, big days of the work week, Wednesday and Thursday. Tidy it up on Friday, and it's 48 hours from kickoff. It's time to get ready. And if the player is not there, regardless of how much they want him and or miss him, you won't have a game plan that has the coaching staff distracted, and the team would immediately see when they installed it, wow, they were not prepared for Ezekiel not to be here.
All right, well, if Zeke isn't there, it's Tony Pollard or it's Alfred Morris who will probably get those duties. Coming up, bad news for Tom Brady and the Patriots. That's next on First Things First. Boxing action coming your way on Fox. The American Dream. Erislandy Lara going toe-to-toe with Ramon Alvarez for the super welterweight title. Catch it all Saturday, 8 Eastern, 5 Pacific on Fox and the Fox Sports app. Time for us to go viral. So after news broke of Andrew Luck's retirement Saturday, things got a little awkward inside Lucas Oil Stadium. I don't know why I did it like that. As fans booed him off the field. Former Colt and current Jaguars long snapper Matt Overton got an idea when he saw this. He tweeted to any angry Colts season ticket holders who are seeking a refund, "I'd be more than happy to buy your season tickets off of you and donate them." Now, this had my partner Nick Wright all kinds of fired up this morning with Matt going crazy.
It's a nice sentiment,
but
I feel like Matt Overton might have bitten off a bit more than he can chew here because of the word any. He didn't say if a Colts season ticket holder. What do you think this he makes $900 grand this year? I looked it up. He's made $4 million in his NFL career. What Colts season tickets say? They're $100 a ticket, 10 games. So you're at $1,000. If 300 people take him up on this, he's basically playing for free this year after taxes. Like, what? Matt Overton, maybe walk that one back just a bit. It's a nice sentiment, but I don't think he can follow through on it.
He said he was watching morning TV, and people say dumb stuff all the time.
Oh, yeah?
He said, no, typically people won't follow up on it. Like information. No, they won't follow through on it. So, no, he's not going to. You need to concentrate. You need to concentrate on Jacksonville. And the long snapper's going to.
He's not even
What about all those
playing on
empty
the
seats in
Colts.
Jacksonville?
And he's going to be on the field a lot. Long snapper in Jacksonville, that is a work-intensive position.
Stories to start your morning this morning. Julio Jones, as promised, is getting paid. The Falcons star receiver said he wouldn't hold out this season because team owner Arthur Blank promised they'd get a deal done, and now Blank is holding true to that, saying a deal with Julio will be done before Week 1. See, how important is it for the Falcons to get this done?
Oh, they're going to get it done. I talked to Julio a few weeks ago at the Hall of Fame game, him and Matty Ice. They're ready for the season. Julio said, I'm patient. So it might not be before the first game, but him and Mr. Blank have worked out a little situation. But Mr. Blank got plenty of money. We'll run out of breath before Arthur Blank runs out of money.
Well, and this is the ideal player-owner relationship, where you have a player who the team went out and got. If you remember them, they traded a bunch to move all the way up into the top 5 to draft Julio. He's been paid early every time. He's outplayed his contract every time. And now that he has faith, it's going to get done so he doesn't
And he's a huge draw in that region. Not only played his high school football close there, played his college football there at Alabama. Yep. And in Atlanta, it is SEC crazy about college football, even though they love their Falcons. So he's a big draw there for Mr. Blank.
All right, moving on. Washington left tackle Trent Williams remains a holdout and has asked to be traded. Head coach Jay Gruden very strongly doubts that Williams will actually be traded. Nick, how do you think this plays out?
There are a few teams across the NFL, maybe most notably the Houston Texans, that if they haven't called up and tried to pry him away, I don't know what they're doing. And I don't know what Washington is doing, being seemingly so obstreperous, if you will, about the refusal to trade. I couldn't think of another word. I apologize. Belligerent.
You could think of another word
okay,
that obstreperous.
all right, I apologize.
I
As soon as I said it, I wanted to pull it back. My point is this. Hold on a second. My point is, this isn't just about money. He thinks that he had a legitimate medical misdiagnosis.
Yes.
He's made a bunch of money. He's a proud man, and he's saying, I will not play for you. So I don't think he's going to lose this staring contest. Take what you can get for Trent Williams.
You'll be happy. Houston, I talked to my guy Peter King.
Oh, okay.
He told me last week, give me an update of all the teams he went to. Houston has called, but right now Washington is insisting on they're not going to trade him. Trent Williams is insisting. Anyone who knows him, he's insisting I'm not playing for Washington in that franchise anymore because some of the things you talked about and some of the things in the past.
All right, moving on. The Cowboys' top cornerback Byron Jones was activated from the PUP list and is in line to play Week 1. Jones has not missed a single game throughout his 4 NFL seasons. See, how important is Byron Jones to the Cowboys' defense?
Oh, he's vitally important to what they're doing. We don't talk about him enough, but especially with their lack of depth on that defensive front, their pass coverage guys, they're going to have to be exceptional. Now, last year, he got off to a phenomenal start. First half of the season, he was playing at a Pro Bowl level, leveled off a little bit, but definitely a Pro Bowl level player. And this is a guy looking for a contract extension long term. He's a must-needed piece to a very good defense they have in Dallas.
It's critical for them that he's out there, and it's critical for him for the reasons Chris mentioned. He had a year that I think shocked a lot of people last season. Even as a first-round pick, he was rated as by some services as the best corner in football. I don't think people saw that coming from him. And now, as this is his walk year, it's a huge season for him.
Yeah, they moved him from safety to cornerback. Chris Richards comes over from Seattle, gets the best out of that talent,
Yep.
and we saw that last year evidently in the games, and they believe he's only going to get better. His versatility in that secondary is needed.
All right, on to the Patriots now. They were dealt a blow to their offense yesterday. Center David Andrews might be done for this season because of blood clots. Andrews has been the Patriots starting center in their last 3 Super Bowl appearances. So, Chris, how big of a deal is this injury for Tom Brady in the Patriots offense, that center position?
It's a huge injury. For those who don't know David Andrews, we talk about him a lot on the show, and the reason why is because I talked to Dante Scarnecchia, the offensive line coach, and he always talked about how important this guy was. When the offensive line, it's not only step by step, heartbeat by heartbeat, the most unison that you need a unit to be in on the football field. It's like dancing, and you can't dance unless you know the rhythm of your partners. But with Tom Brady, it's been about continuity. In 215 of Brady's first 251 starts, the left tackle were Matt Light and then Nate Solder. And then here of late, last year they lost Nate Solder to the Giants as a free agent. Now they've had 3 straight where they have another left tackle. And now their best offensive lineman, David Andrews, they lose him. Outside of Gronk, he's been the most consistent offensive lineman for the last 5 years. We know they lost their left tackle, Trent Williams. Trent Brown had to let him go to the Raiders for that ginormous salary that he got there. He wasn't a natural left tackle. He's going to play right tackle there with the Raiders. But I am concerned about Tom Brady because I remember the first 12 games of the season last year and how Tom was timid in the pocket. And a lot of times, Tom gave up on the play earlier than I had seen him give up on a lot of plays, and that was because the questionable pass protection. But Dante Scarnecchia does not get enough credit there in New England. But whatever they're paying him, it won't be enough for the job he's got to do with that patch offensive line, because you don't get information like this on basically 7 days before we get ready to start the season and try to recover. He's a perennial Pro Bowler. Tom is comfortable with him. So now what does Tom do? Does he have to, 20 years, start calling the protections more because he doesn't have a lot of experience with the center? To me, the center is the quarterback of that offensive line, and the overall center skills are typically underrated because we normally only talk about the left tackle and his importance.
And when you talk about the first dozen or so games of the season, there was an element, and I say this with no intended disrespect for Tom Brady, but of chucking and ducking that we had not seen from Brady at any point in his career, where he was clearly making, and I think they were the right decisions, but what we would call business decisions, which is no, no, no. This first down is not worth potentially this hit I'm going to take. And by the way, pardon me, that's one of the huge reasons he's been able to play at this high of a level longer than anyone ever.
Absolutely.
It is smart. It is the right, for him, the absolute right thing to do. But we are now, to amplify Chris's point, in a position where Brady's going to have his 3rd different left tackle in 3 years. He is going to have potentially a different center who Chris has been saying for months. David Andrews has talked about on this show more than any show in America combined because of Chris's focus on that position. He's going to be without his best offensive lineman and his best blocker also from last year in Gronk.
Yes.
So you are your 3 most reliable blockers, Trent Brown, David Andrews, Rob Gronkowski, all gone. The Trent Brown one they anticipated, they knew was coming, but they're still going to be relying on Isaiah Wynn, who, while was a first-round pick a year ago, has never played an NFL snap because he popped his Achilles in preseason last year. Whomever they use at tight end is not going to be the blocker Gronk was.
Yes.
And whomever they use at center is not going to be nearly the player David Andrews is. And for a team that you said you believe, and I think the evidence points to, is going to try, even with the addition of Josh Gordon, transition more to a power running game, defensive-focused attack, you need your offensive line to be able to get that thing going for you. Brady might be able to deal with lack of protection because he's so smart he can see where it's coming. Your running backs cannot. And so this, to me, is a major offensive line health situation. It's the 2nd straight year, one of the best centers in football with a non-football issue. Travis Frederick last year with the autoimmune disorder, and now this year David Andrews with blood clots in your lungs, which is a terrifying situation.
And those 3 positions that you talked about that they're losing are probably 3 to implement the next man up mentality, that you can't just plug another guy in there just because the quarterback is at such a risk there. All right, moving on to the Cleveland Browns now.
That's what we say when you're not here, Jenna.
Can't do it.
Okay,
Just
I
can't
like
do
that.
it.
We should should focus on that more. The Browns have been without Odell Beckham Jr. for nearly 3 weeks as he's been battling a hip injury. OBJ, though, returned to team drills for the first time yesterday. Hadn't been on the field with Baker, Mayfield, and the rest of the starting offense since August 6th. Freddie Kitchens says both Baker and Odell will be on top of their game come week 1. But, Cece, how much of Baker's success this season will be tied in to Odell? Depends on Odell Beckham.
I think it's very important that Freddie Kitchens and Baker had success before Odell got there. You could see last year, Jarvis Landry, he was affected when Q was let go as the head coach. Hugh Jackson, when Freddie Kitchens started, they started running the football and they started spreading it around to the other receivers. Previously, before that, Jarvis Landry was targeted 12 times a game. Immediately, almost cut those in half. He was targeted only 7 times a game. So he took a haircut soon as Freddie Kitchens took over. Baker, we saw him having success spreading the ball around. To me, there is not one of the great wide receiver quarterback combinations to me that it's dependent upon just one guy, because there's so many ways to throw the ball. To the tight ends are such viable receivers, to the running backs out of the backfield. They're going to spread the ball. Even Matty Ice, Julio Jones. No, that quarterback, no, he's not going to make his name off of that. He's going to make his name because of his versatility, and when they try to take him away, you can exploit the defenses. But I saw Baker without the kid with the blonde hair. Now, the kid don't have blonde hair no more, but he's still a superstar. So, for me, no, it's not contingent on OBJ being at its best. The truth of the matter, OBJ, the last 32 games, he's been only available for 16 of those games. I believe he should be able to enhance the things that Baker Mayfield does. Baker is very good on the quick strike. OBJ is very good at catching, running away from the defense. Both of them have more talent with the units they're playing with than any other time, and I know Baker just got to the league. But for OBJ, that's very important. In talking with him this offseason, he realized he's got to sacrifice some things for the overall team good and winning the division, getting in the playoffs. His last playoff appearance was not a good one, so getting back in that position, that was one of the real goals, and I believe it's on the totality of the talent that Dorsey has put together there to be able to help him out. No, Baker's career is not contingent on OBJ. And it's easier to find another receiver, especially in Cleveland right now. In the next 10 years, why wouldn't you want to go to Cleveland if you want to catch passes? With
Baker, I mean, and people need to remember, Baker last year set the all-time rookie touchdown passing record. Broke a mark held by Russell Wilson and Peyton Manning. So it's a pretty meaningful record. Those are the two guys that held it. And he did it despite not starting the whole season. Right? Like, I mean, he didn't start a game until week 3, or he played in week 3 and started in week 4. So we know how talented he is. I also think people need to remember how wildly productive Odell has been when he's been out there. Odell's first 59 games of his career stack up favorably to anyone in the history of the league. Now, the problem has been the last couple years, to C's point, the availability.
Yes.
That is the problem, not the Lil Wayne interviews, not the sideline stuff. Those are secondary distractions. The problem is, all of a sudden, he came into the league, I think it was an ankle sprain, kept him out his first 4 games of his career, and then he was exceptionally healthy. Hamstring the first 4 games of his career. Then he was exceptionally healthy, and since then, he has not been.
Right.
He had the year lost to injury. Last year, he was dealing with that quad bruise throughout the season.
The hip injury
Absolutely. And so now this is something, much like with Carson Wentz, maybe not to the same degree, but you cannot disregard. You have to include when you're talking about what he will do. But if he's out there, he will be wildly productive, and their skill sets match up perfectly. One thing Baker was exceptional at last year was deep passes, and one thing once Freddie Kitchens took over, they chucked it deep. They threw the ball deep, more than 15 yards down the field, 28% of the time. That led the league. We know Odell is a dominant deep threat. He didn't have the ability to showcase it so much the last couple of years in New York. It was a lot of quick slants where he had to do all the work. So I think that part of his game will get a bit of a resurgence as long as he's out there, and that part of the Browns offense could be very dynamic.
And it's early in Freddie Kitchens' career, but I want to watch moving forward, like, what's going to be his theme? What's going to be the thing that puts the little sparkle in his eye? When I did the game last year in Cleveland, talking to him privately, I asked him, I said, Coach, I'm not going to tell the audience, but can you give me a little sample of what you're going to do early? He said, Chris, You don't know me, Will, but you need to know I like to throw it, and I like to throw that thing deep.
Yeah.
Now, he was a quarterback at Alabama, and that's one thing they didn't let him do there. But he did have that little twinkle in his eye when we started talking about it. And then early in the game, I think it was either on the first or second play, they threw a long pass. So I was like, okay, duly noted. Now watching him go forward, Bruce Arians with Tampa Bay, everywhere he's been, that's what he's been noted for. Let's watch Freddie as he establishes himself as a young coach in the NFL.
Are you worried about his availability, his durability, Odell?
I'm always worried about. I take pride in being out there. Don't tell me how good you are. Go out there and show me how good you are. And anytime you're evaluating players, you have to take something off if the player is not available. Tom Brady, not only because of the wins, not only because of the comebacks, not only because of the Super Bowls, but he's been so consistent. And you have to utilize that in measuring players. I'm concerned. Nick always calls him the most talented. I say Julio Jones the most talented, and Julio Jones is the best. And Julio Jones has a better track record as far as staying healthy.
And he's been more available. One defense of Odell as far as the availability. Anybody would have had their leg broke on the play he got his leg broken on a couple years ago. There's ankle broken. That's bad luck. That's playing pro football. Last year, I do wonder if the Giants were a playoff team, if the season was going differently, if he would have missed that time with a quad injury. I wonder how much of that was by the team and by Odell, something of a...
I hope it was more severe, because that'd be a personal indictment on himself as a football player. Was he available? Well, we're in the playoffs. I'm playing. That's not a trait that we would like to put with our best football players.
That's fair. The point that I'm trying to make is he suffered one major injury in his career. It was the broken ankle, and there was nothing he could do about that. He got caught up and got rolled up on. I don't think this preseason injury necessarily adds much to the list of the injury woes with him. We'll just see if he can play 16 games
This
year.
is the way injuries go, Jenna. If you like the player, typically the injuries aren't a big deal. Carson Wentz, we like him. You know something? Man, they got a little bump here. You know something? A little bad luck here. He ran into two people at the goal line, shattered his knee. Odell, if you like him, Nick Wright, not a big deal.
I didn't say it's not a big deal.
If you don't necessarily like him, that consistency is very important, Chris. A different perspective.
I didn't say it's not a big deal. I said the broken leg is nothing. What's he going to do about the broken leg?
Coming up, are the Colts in good hands with Jacoby Brissett? That's ahead.
Touched by God. You said that.
Okay, well,
that's what you said.
That is true. Kissed me on my right cheek, told me that be my son. That be my boy.
Back here, first things first, joined by former head coach Eric Mangini. Hey, Coach.
Good morning.
I both employed you, then unemployed you in like half a sentence there.
Always the coach.
Yeah, he's our coach. We call him
coach. You
coach.
are our coach. It's great to have you here. Good morning. We'll start talking about
you.
something else. Now to the Rams. Let's talk about that. It's been a high-octane offensive show under head coach Sean McVay. In fact, in his first two seasons, no team has scored more points than the Rams. And only the Patriots have more wins. But what about that dreaded Super Bowl hangover after their loss to New England? Well, McVay's not hungover, says this is the best he's ever felt going into a season. Coach, you see the Rams making another Super Bowl run?
It's going to be hard, and we talk about this all the time. The ability to deal with success is one component, or failure is one component. The ability to deal with success is another component. And sometimes you get caught up with this expectation that where you finish is where you get to start. But the reality is it's so much different going into the next season, and there's been some turnover there. They've lost two guys on the offensive line. They lost both their center and a guard, and that continuity that they've had in the offensive line has been a big part of their offensive success. Then you lose a guy like Ndamukong Suh, and there's two other starters on defense, Mark Barron and LaMarcus Joyner. So there's five guys that were starters that played meaningful roles last year that they have to replace. So that also, with the fact they've been one of the healthier teams over the last 2 years, which really is an aberration, and you can't count on that going into the season, it's going to be interesting to see how this group responds to adversity. And that was a component we talked about with the characters that they have as part of the team when it really gets tough,
yes,
which they haven't faced. how is that group going to respond?
So one thing that I found really interesting, Peter King talked to Sean McVay, and we talked about what he learned from the Super Bowl preparing for this year. And McVay put so much of the onus on him. Talked about one particular play in the Super Bowl, the 6th play of the game, that Jared Goff, they had quarters beat. Quarters coverage was how the Patriots kind of surprised them. They've been playing a single high safety look for the most part of the year. They came out in quarters coverage. They had it beat, and Jared Goff didn't see it. And Jared Goff threw the ball away, and McVay puts that on him. I didn't communicate it to him. I didn't tell him to attack enough. I didn't tell him to look for this. And I understand that, and I appreciate that, and I think that's the right thing for a coach to do, putting the onus on himself. But this season, a lot of this is going to come down to Jared Goff. Todd Gurley, we do not believe, is going to be, at the very least, as dynamic as he has been in years past. Also, Belichick exposed McVay's scheme at least somewhat in the Super Bowl to where other teams are going to try to take from that. So what can Jared Goff do if he doesn't have one of the 2 or 3 best running backs in football behind him for every snap, or nearly every snap he takes? What can he do if Sean McVay all of a sudden goes from giving you an enormous decided schematic edge to just a slight schematic edge? Can Jared Goff, the #1 pick of the draft, going into year 4, who probably feels, well, the #2 pick of the draft got a contract extension. He's never been to a playoff game. I was a #1 pick. I don't have an extension. I've been to the Super Bowl. What can he do, and what can he do against the league's best defenses? Last year in 5 games against the Broncos, the Bears, the Eagles, and then the playoffs, the Cowboys in New England, Jared Goff had 0 touchdowns and 7 interceptions. That's a red flag. Jared Goff's inability to adjust in the Super Bowl, to me, is a red flag. So I understand Sean McVay saying it's on me, but that's got to be a partnership between McVay, the young star head coach, and the former #1 pick of the draft, Jared Goff.
Well, when they have success, we can't give him all the credit. And the failures in the Super Bowl, we can't give him all the blame. But he did realize early that he was taken to school. You should know, whatever coverage they had been playing, if I'm playing Bill Belichick, I come out of retirement, I'll tell you, give me the last 4 games of what their coverages are, and I'm going to flip it. They play 75% cover 1, cover 2, I'm going to flip it. And whatever the coverages they play, 8, 6, 4, 2, and whatever's at the bottom, I'm expecting that going into the game. I'm expecting them to adjust during the game, and I'm expecting them to make another adjustment at halftime. That's what Bill Belichick, that's what he's always done. Learned that from Parcells. So for me going in, what did you think they were going to do? Of course they were going to change their coverage. That's why Bill Belichick has been so dominant the last 20 years. To me, just one thing. Jared Goff, if he can improve on his play-action pass compared to his regular dropbacks. Last year, led the NFL with 220 dropbacks with play-action fake. Second in the league was Tom Brady at 184. But this is where the rubber meets the road. His passing rating in straight dropbacks is 20 points lower than it was with play-action. So when he doesn't have play action, he is not as good of a quarterback. So it lets you know that Todd Gurley fake, that play action into the line of scrimmage, those linebackers being deceptive, a lot of his success has been Todd Gurley and the head coach. And I talked to Peter King last week, and he is looking for Jared Goff through Sean McVay's conversation to make a huge leap this season as they prepare. And he believes he'll improve in every area of the passing game, Coach.
Yeah, maybe they don't watch this show, but they probably should have, because we talked about it week in and week out about what they were going to do.
And it's on too early on the West Coast.
Well, you know, tape it, because you understood what was going to happen when you go into the Super Bowl. They were going to take away your best pitch, and they were going to force you to play left-handed. That's not new. And Cris makes a really good point about drop-back passing. That's the component of, and we talk about this in meeting rooms all the time. If the other team knows you have to pass, and you know you have to pass, and everybody in the stadium knows you have to pass,
can you do it?
Can you do it? Can the receivers run routes and get open? Can the quarterback get him the ball? Can the O-line hold up in protection? And that is the definition or that's the difference between a lot of quarterbacks. There are a lot of quarterbacks that with play action, when you have that component, and the decisions are easier and coverages are cleaner and there's an either or, they're pretty good. But when you're in that space, can you do it? And that's something he's got to prove. And he's got to prove that without 2 very important members of the offensive line who have given him continuity and stability.
And he's got to prove that knowing we don't really know which Todd Gurley is going to show up. He had Todd Gurley to rely on, and you don't know really which Todd Gurley. So between whatever the plan B is after the Patriots exposed their scheme last year, whatever their plan B is when they're not just throwing it down the field, and not knowing what you get in Todd Gurley, I think that's a big question for the team.
And Coach, to circle back to what you started with about dealing with failure is one thing, dealing with success is another, I wonder how Jared Goff individually views last season. Because obviously during the regular season, it was enormous success. During the playoffs, it wasn't just the Super Bowl where Jared Goff struggled. Over the course of the playoffs as a whole, he had 56% completions through 1 touchdown, 2 picks, and a 72 rating. He had the one really, I thought, truly impressive drive on the road in New Orleans to get them in field goal range after the controversial non-call to force overtime. But aside from that, Jared Goff was not the force multiplier in that playoff run, and I think a lot of that did have to do, Jenna, with that Todd Gurley wasn't throughout that playoff run. The Todd Gurley who every defense had to stop first, second, and third on that team. And so when things weren't perfect, when Cooper Kupp went out, he was a different player. When Todd Gurley was not 100%, he was a different player. When Sean McVay isn't out-coaching the other coach, he's a different player. Jared Goff was not picked to be a game manager. He's picked to be one of your force multipliers, and that, to me, is what will determine if the Rams can get close to back to the level they were last year.
Right, and you're not a force multiplier if you need another force multiplier to make you be in that position.
All right, we'll take a break. Coach, stick around. Coming up, Zeke spoke, sort of. Will he be a Cowboy for life? That's next on First Things First. Back here with Coach Mangini, we're talking Cowboys. Their star running back Ezekiel Elliott still waiting for his new deal. Haven't heard much from Zeke of late, but yesterday an article came out from an interview back in July before his holdout began, where he said this: I love playing for the Dallas Cowboys. I love the organization, my teammates. I do want to be a Cowboy for the rest of my life. And hopefully that's a possibility. But even Emmitt Smith, the greatest running back ever, ended up going to play a couple of years for another organization. So it's just the nature of the game. But I want to be a Dallas Cowboy for as long as I can. Coach, you believe Zeke still feels this way more than a month after making those comments?
Yeah, but it's I want to be a Dallas Cowboy, asterisk, 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 as long as I'm the highest paid running back in the NFL. I mean, that's all it is. Otherwise, I'll be a San Francisco 49er, or I'll be whoever is willing to pay me. That's where I'll go. And he puts himself in very high company with referencing Emmitt Smith, and he feels like he should be treated a certain way, and that's merited. And if that all happens year after year after year, he'll be a Dallas Cowboy. Otherwise, he'll go somewhere else.
Yeah, of course, just like any other player. As far as trying to start and finish your career, it's just not a reality that 99% of the players in the league are going to experience. Tom Brady is fighting everything that he can, and he's the greatest that's ever done it. So we should know it's a new NFL. It's new in sports. To think that the team that your hero plays for is going to be the one and only team that he plays for. No, it's not. That's yesteryear. Our friend Derek Jeter, I saw him, last month in Philly. No, we're not going to have athletes like that. It's going to get rarer and rarer, and especially when you come in as one of the top paid, when you're a top 5 pick, and then now you're trying to reset the market, eventually they can't afford you. When you have salaries like that, ultimately it's your skill, but also it's a part with the salary.
Well, and Clay Matthews had some interesting comments this week. Clay Matthews, I think a lot of people just associate him with the Green Bay Packers. Maybe people are surprised when they see, oh, he's a Los Angeles Ram now. And he talked about how he thought he was going to stay with the Packers, offered to take a pay cut. Even when his agent got an offer from the Rams, he had his agent go back to Green Bay and say, hey, here's what the Rams are paying me. Not that much. You guys want to match it? And they said, no, we're good. Thanks, Clay. We appreciate it. He didn't do anything wrong. They had decided to move on. So I take your point very well that it is rare in the NFL, if you have a long career, that you can do it with only one team, usually, especially if you're not a quarterback. Quarterbacks are typically able to do that if they're high achievers. Or almost any other position, it is rare that you have one guy stay with the team his whole career. But I do believe that Zeke wants to. I do believe Zeke understands, at least for the rest of this part of my prime, it's going to be hard to find a team with a better offensive line. As long as Jerry Jones is the owner of the Cowboys, it's going to be hard to find a team with a more supportive owner. No matter where I go, it's going to be hard to find a team with a better brand, more ability for me to make money off the field. And there's not going to be many, if any, teams that are more intent on trying to put out a championship-level team each and every season. And he knows there's not going to be any ownership change in Dallas. It might transition from Jerry to Steven, but that team's not getting sold. You're not going to have to deal with something like that. So, of course, he'd want to stay with the Dallas Cowboys. And I think he believes if he gets the extension the coach is talking about, that would take him through year 9. You're talking about a 4-year extension when he's already got 2 years left on his contract. He's played 3 years. So how long will a running back in today's NFL, especially a running back who would have gotten market-setting deals twice, once as the top 5 pick, once the deal he wants now, how much past year 9 realistically would he play? So for all parties, I think it's best that Zeke plays with the Cowboys as long as possible. I think for him on and off the field, and obviously for the Cowboys to have any realistic shot this season at winning that division over Philadelphia, they have to have Ezekiel Elliott for a minimum of 14 games, if not the full 16.
I remember when I went to visit my brother in his office when he had one of his early jobs, and his name tag was screwed in to the wall. And then when I got my first NFL job or my first office in the NFL, mine was one that slid in and out. And that's the reality. All the lockers have name tags that slide in and out, and that's just what you sign up for when you get in the NFL. And to your point about the ownership and the cachet of the Cowboys, I think that's part of Zeke's consideration, but it's really just going to come down to who will pay me the most money. And the idea that this is going to take him through the end of his career, contracts aren't like that for players either anymore. That dynamic is changing. The 4-year contract has become a 2-year contract because, once you get past that year 2, the market's been reset so much that really good players are saying, well, wait a second, I'm not playing for this. And that signing bonus you paid me, well, that doesn't really matter. That was just that was play money that you gave me initially. This is what I'm earning this year.
And NFL owners are just like any other business owners, operators. How can I get the same kind of labor, or maybe I'll take a little bit less for cheap?
A lot less money.
So ultimately, you're an 8-9-year veteran, and your salary has reached a certain point. How can I replace some of that productivity, even when they just start making up stuff? James Conner, Jalen Samuel, they replaced the productivity in Pittsburgh. Yeah, but it was about the money. That's all it was about, not that they weren't happy with the player. So it becomes tougher and tougher, even with the salaries, the way they are increasing to build stay with the team longer.
But Zeke has to be confident in his holdout, knowing who the Cowboys have in his place. I mean, the Cowboys aren't going to, how successful can they be with a combination of Pollard and Morris taking them with Dak Prescott as far as they can?
Yeah, that's one part of the equation, but you also need to know who you're getting into a fight with. And when you get into a fight with a guy like Jerry Jones he's not going to be pushed around. He's not going to be put in a situation where he looks badly or the organization has to compromise long into the future.
At the expense of losing games?
Look, sometimes you got to take a stand. And it's not just for this deal. It's for all the deals that are going to happen moving forward, because once you open that door, then everybody follows that game plan until you show that you can stop what they're doing.
Real quick, something Cris said the last couple days is that even if Zeke gets a deal done before the first game of the season, there's a point in next week where it would be too late for him to play week 1. I'm curious if you agree with that. Cris has said he thinks around Tuesday, if it's not done by a week before today, if he were to sign, for example, Thursday night before the game Sunday, that it'd be very difficult to get him in there in the week 1 game plan.
Well, I would imagine they could get him caught up mentally. It's physically when you put a guy in a position to perform at the level he's going to have to perform at with that intensity in week 1 when he hasn't had any exposure. Could you put him in the game? Yeah. Now, what type of risk are you taking for him to pull something, then you lose him? And Cris would have a much better understanding of that from a physical perspective. You're taking a real chance organizationally.
All right, we got to take a break. Coach, see you a little bit later. Coming up, Aaron Rodgers chiming in on Andrew Luck's sudden retirement. Next on First Things First. Back here on First Things First, we're going viral. Big Ben made his preseason debut Sunday night in Tennessee and hooked up with Juju for a touchdown. But it was a special moment before the game that caught a lot of people's attention. Check out Ryan Shazier. Playing catch, helping the squad warm up. Just 2 years ago, there were doubts he'd ever walk again. Nice to see this?
Oh, man, not a good sight for me. I watched him play high school football there in South Florida. Then he goes to Ohio State, All-American there. High draft pick. He goes to Pittsburgh Steelers, known for their linebackers, legendary. And no, not good for me. This is not a game that I expect to be limping from, let alone being partially paralyzed on the field. No, I like to remember him as a kid that I saw.
The only point I'll make is that I totally understand what you're saying, which is the last time we saw him on the field, he was maybe on the way to winning Defensive Player of the Year. But then we saw him 9 months later, and it was a shock that he could barely, with assistance, get across the stage at the NFL draft. This, to me, it was great in this regard. Even if football's done, he can now, it would appear, live a relatively normal, healthy life. And that was really in question, that moment when he was carted off the field. So the progress there and the way the Steelers have kept him within the family and embraced him, he's been on the sidelines, seems to be some form of coach or assistant with them, I think is outstanding in that regard.
All right, good stuff. We'll get to Aaron Rodgers' comments on Andrew Luck in just a second, but first, a couple of highlights from last night. CFL Hamilton Tiger Cats wideout Jalen Acklin with a great adjustment and catch.
That's the way the season's going for BC. My son plays for BC up there. Beautiful views up there. Team not a good view this season. Of course, DB's got it picked off. Wide receiver, ball bouncing in his hand on the other side. This is probably a little bit better than the one my man made in the Super Bowl.
Edelman, the Edelman catch in the Super Bowl is exactly what I was thinking of right there, 100%.
You thought he could get up and keep running, though.
I did, though. I didn't think he got touched.
More from the CFL. Montreal Alouette receiver DeVere Posey diving backwards to make that catch.
DeVere Posey, I saw him in Houston when I lived there, and he got drafted by the Texans. C saw him before that when he played his college football at
the Ohio State, from Cincinnati, Ohio. All-American receiver in high school, big-time recruit there, high draft pick in the NFL, didn't all work out there. Also, he led Toronto to a Grey Cup championship a couple years ago.
At Raiders practice, Hard Knocks star Hunter Renfrow shaking the defender, stretching out to make a great catch.
This is usually more C's lane than mine, but I'm sorry, production staff. Well, how does this make the show?
Yeah,
this ain't no real big play. Just because we like Hunter Renfrow, because Jenna likes Hard Knocks, because he was a star at Clemson.
Nice catch.
That is
guy,
pedestrian.
Understated.
Okay,
really
none of that's
sweet.
True. You're just
no, that's all true.
No,
I watch Hard Knocks.
No, he's just a little scrappy coach's son.
He's great.
That's why you like him.
Finally, high school football in Virginia. Benedictine Prep quarterback Jay Wolfe with an incredible 39-yard touchdown run keeps on chucking.
It was a great play by this high school kid. I love the high school highlights. The sideline, the kind of the shaky footage. I love it, man. It was great. We made 6 people miss on this play.
Yeah, Mike plays college football at Marshall, has one offer.
Oh.
Very nice. On Saturday,
put your earpiece in,
on Saturday, Andrew Luck shocked the sports world by announcing his retirement from the NFL at age 29. Many around the league chimed in, voiced their support for Luck's decision. Aaron Rodgers was asked how he felt about the Colts fans booing Luck, and Aaron Rodgers didn't hold back. Take a listen.
I thought it was pretty disgusting. He's making a really tough decision. And even before that, he makes a decision. I don't know why that doesn't stay in-house to kind of protect them a little bit. Although, when I think about it, I thought it would have been, more of a standing ovation type thing and a thank you than boos. But I said it this morning. I 100% respect him immensely for his decision. I salute him for choosing, quality of life. He's a fantastic player. He had a great career, and he's got a lot to be proud of. What he went through to get himself back on the field is what it means to be a leader. And I'm excited for him, and I think what he did is actually very selfless, not selfish.
Strong words by Andrew Luck there. CC, did the Colts do enough to support Andrew Luck during his 7 years there in Indy?
No, the reason why we have the fans booing is because their lack of support for Andrew Luck. They knocked the football out of him. He said he had gone through a cycle of 4 years, injury, rehab, surgeries. How many painkillers do you think he took in there? How many sleepless nights do you think he had in there? How many times did you think he questioned, you know something? I don't know if I'm cut out to play football. So him making his announcement is not the first time he thought about quitting football. He thought about it before he made the comeback from the other shoulder injury. He didn't think he was going to be able to play then. And now to have an injury that thought it was something minor and for it to be able to turn into something major, no, they didn't support him. You have potentially the first or second most talented player you've ever had in the organization outside of Peyton Manning. And Peyton Manning had some type of discomfort with his neck. It didn't come from them not protecting him, them having a bad system. No, it just came from the wear and tear of playing the game and throwing the football. Andrew Luck's came from me getting hit by them, by you not putting any resources in front of me to keep them from hitting me. And that's the reason why Andrew Luck, one of the brightest kids we've ever had play in the NFL, that's why we have him ending his career before he gets to his 30th birthday.
Much like after Kevin Durant's injury, we talked about, well, who's to blame? Who shares the blame? And it was a lot of people were involved. There's a lot of people that are guilty of Andrew Luck's career ending the way it ended.
And it is a great comparison with Kevin Durant. But the thing about Kevin Durant, at the end, Kevin Durant said, no, it wasn't the organization's fault. It was all in my hands. I had the information. It was all my fault. I guarantee you, Andrew Luck will not be saying the same thing.
Well, and even if he does, it won't be true. He takes the high road so often that I don't think he's going to. He went 7 years without ever throwing anyone under the bus. But I've talked a lot about how I think having a great offensive line in this league can sometimes be overrated, but having an awful offensive line can ruin everything. And that's what Luck had repeatedly, really every year he played until this past season. And we saw what he was able to do this past season once he got fully healthy. He's one of 10 quarterbacks in NFL history who started at least 50 games and never had a season with a top 10 rush offense. There's one other name on that list that jumps out at you, because it's guys like Tim Couch and John Kitna and David Carr, a lot of pedestrian names. But the non-pedestrian name on that list is Dan Marino. And Dan Marino also has something in common with Andrew Luck in this regard. You look at him as talented as anyone who's ever played, but disappointed in this regard. Made the Super Bowl in year 2, never made it back. Like, it wasn't just a lack of offensive line. It was lack of a running game. It was early in his career, lack of a defense. It was the lack of continuity at the head coach position. It was so many things where it takes, barring one awful, terrible career-ending injury, it takes a village, if you will, to ruin a career of Andrew Luck's. It can't just be one person. It can't just be one mistake. It's year after year mistakes. It's year after year mismanagement. The one thing we haven't talked about in this regard, and it's one of the reasons I thought of Kevin Durant, is what about the training staff? What about the misdiagnosis or slow diagnosis of the shoulder injury? What about Luck having to travel to Europe to have procedures done? What about if this calf strain back in March could have been dealt with better earlier to where he didn't feel like, I'm on this cycle again of pain, rehab, injury? At any point, could someone have, for lack of a better term, cauterized this wound to where he did get back out there? He did remember how fun it is to play on a good team under Frank Reich, where he doesn't have to do everything, and can get past this moment of his career to have a second consecutive healthy season. That's what to me will be one of the great what-ifs in modern sports history.
Do you agree with that there should be blame placed on the training staff? Has anyone looked into it?
Well, the only thing that I would say to debate that point is that Andrew Luck took a lot of blame for the first rehab. Said he did things wrong. He took a lot of, I pushed myself when I should have been resting, and they might have advised him to do something else. He took the other route from a rehab standpoint, but collectively, from a management standpoint, I don't know where Ryan Grigson is today, but he can't be feeling good. I tried to reach out to Coach Pagano. I know Coach Pagano tried to protect Andrew and tried to put in a system where he would get rid of the football. But the players they put in front of Andrew Luck, from 2012 to 2017, he was hit more than any other quarterback in the league. Now, somebody's got to be able to take blame for that. And Andrew, I mean, I know he's got his degree from Stanford. They don't have dumb guys at Stanford. So for me, he can only take a small part of that blame, trying to win games and holding on to the football. So collectively, the medical staff, I would be looking. If I own the team, I would be looking at the medical staff. I've already looked at Grigson and determined his fate by bringing Ballard over to be my new general manager.
But the other element is, when you take almost even a broader look at this, the Indianapolis Colts were shockingly fortunate that they were just absolutely awful, maybe the 2 best years in the last 30 to be absolutely awful. They were just terrible the year before, after being mediocre the prior season, the year before Peyton Manning comes back. And by the way, Peyton Manning could have come out a year earlier and didn't. And then Andrew Luck, the next generational talent, he could have come out a year earlier when the Panthers had the pick. He didn't. They were just awful the year they needed to get those two guys. And to have 1 Super Bowl victory and 2 appearances total is shocking when you have almost 25 uninterrupted years of Manning to Luck.
Colin Cowherd actually made an interesting point about that. Said, you know, Tom Brady came into the league with a great coach and a great team who had all the pieces already fit into place, and he just had to go play. You know, Andrew Luck comes into the league with a disastrous team where he had to really patch it and make it go. Imagine what he would be or where he would be today if he had been
Chris's
placed.
system players.
Yep.
That so much of it is dependent on where you go and the luck of the draw on that.
All right, we'll take a break. Coming up, is a Super Bowl hangover inevitable for the Rams? We'll discuss next on First Things First. College football is back this weekend, beginning with the all-new Big Noon kickoff pregame show. Then it's right into the action as FAU visits number 5 Ohio State Saturday, starting at 11 a.m. Eastern on Fox and the Fox Sports app. The newest member of the Fox family, Urban Meyer, sat down with new Ohio State head coach Ryan Day. Here's a sneak peek of that conversation.
You know, every time, even now, I come walking in this beautiful stadium and it hits me really hard. And that's, you think about the history, tradition, you look around this place, and the former players have always hit me really hard. What happens to you when you walk in here?
First off, my heart starts pumping, you know, because you think back on all the great players and great coaches that have been here before and the great games that have been played here in the Horseshoe. And it just makes you realize it's such a responsibility when you step in here and it's hallowed ground.
Well, you can catch the full interview during Saturday's debut of Big Noon Kickoff at 11 a.m. Eastern on Fox prior to the Florida Atlantic-Ohio State game. First of all, it's exciting. It's happening. Fall is almost upon us. College football is here. See, what are you expecting from Ryan Day and your Buckeyes?
I'm expecting an exciting offensive team. Ryan Day, he has an NFL background. Chip Kelly in Philadelphia. A lot of people don't realize that, but they're going to stretch the field. They're not going to be as run-oriented as Urban Meyer has been in the past, and you could see that last year when we had Dwayne Haskins, them throwing the ball down the field. They have Fields, transfer quarterback, University of Georgia. I believe he will be a sleeper Heisman Trophy candidate. They got a couple injuries on the defensive front that I'm concerned about, but their schedule is favorable. Michigan State, Wisconsin, and Penn State at home, leading to November 30th game against the team up north that we go up there and stomp them.
I was going to ask you real quick how big of a drop-off from Haskins' 50 touchdowns to Fields, but you're saying Fields would be a Heisman Trophy winner.
He will. They're going to do it a different way. They're going to pack the groceries a little different way. He's going to run. He's a dual threat. He reminds me of a Braxton Miller with a little more improved arm strength. So Braxton Miller led them to the undefeated season in Urban Meyer's first year back there. So Ryan Day is inheriting the Buckeyes that are stacked, especially on the offensive side.
Good stuff. Just the music alone gets you geeked up.
Yeah.
Time for stories to start your morning. Julio Jones, as promised, is getting paid. The Falcons star receiver said he wouldn't hold out this season because team owner Arthur Blank promised that they would get a deal done, and now Blank is holding true to that, saying a deal with Julio will be done before week 1. See, how important is it for the Falcons to get this done?
It's not that important. I talked to Julio a couple of weeks ago at the Hall of Fame game, him and Matty Ice there on the sideline, and Julio said he was willing to be patient. I told him, hey, man, my guy Mike got that $20 million. Julio said, hey, now, if he worth $20 million, I said, don't say no more, Julio. So him and Arthur Blank have an understanding. Arthur Blank has more money than I have breath left in my body. Now, I think I got a lot of breath, but he's
still got more money.
Yeah, yes.
That Home Depot money, I contributed to some Arthur Blank money, come to think of it this week.
Yeah, his ex-wife took half of it, but he still got a billion.
Still got a lot. So, listen, this is the ideal owner-player relationship where there's trust, where there's high production from the player, no outside distractions, and Julio can show up to training camp without the new deal, trust that it will get done, and my guess is it does get done, maybe on the eve of the season, but Julio's about to become the highest paid receiver in NFL history, and that is justifiable. What that means for guys like Amari Cooper, other receivers waiting for contracts, interested to see.
Washington left tackle Trent Williams remains a holdout and has asked to be traded. Head coach Jay Gruden very strongly doubts that Williams will actually be traded. Nick, how do you see this playing out?
I don't know why Washington is being so, on the surface, stubborn about this entire situation. Trent Williams has a legitimate gripe. It's not just the money. I'm not even certain if the money's a big part of it. It is, he feels like he was misdiagnosed on a major medical condition, and he doesn't trust them anymore, doesn't want to work there, doesn't want to trust his body to them. You have other teams across the league, most notably the team in Texas, the Houston Texans, that desperately need a left tackle, and I imagine would pay maybe even a first-round pick for him. If Trent Williams starts the season on Washington's roster not playing, it's a failure by all parties involved.
I disagree with you because they got a young quarterback that ultimately they think going to play this year. So I'm getting ready to trade a left tackle who we drafted and we made him rich because he thinks that our medical staff did something to him, and we believe in our medical staff. So I totally disagree with you. If I got that young quarterback, he's getting ready to play this year, why would I try to make Houston's business ain't my business.
Of course, but I believe that Trent Williams will not play again for Washington. I think he'll walk.
If he doesn't, then as we get closer to the trade deadline, the asking price should get higher. No, it should get higher for the Redskins.
Oh, okay.
Because teams will be more desperate.
Okay.
Houston's desperate. They got you out here panhandling
panhandling
for a tackle.
No.
Give me a tackle. Give me a tackle. Give me a tackle.
I got no love for that
work
team.
for a tackle.
I'm just saying
work for a tackle. Man, you live in Harlem now, man. You represent Houston.
I don't represent Houston.
Anyway,
your buddies back there doing radio shows and everything. I'm going to give them a shout-out. I'm going to get y'all left tackle.
Okay. The Cowboys' top cornerback Byron Jones was activated from the PUP list, is in line to play Week 1. Did you say a tackle or a taco?
A tackle. Why would he say a taco?
I didn't know. That's why I had to ask now before I forgot.
You can do
Jones has not missed a single game throughout his 4 NFL seasons. CC, how important is Byron Jones to the Cowboys defense?
He's very important with their lack of depth on that defensive front. If you're talking about the weakest area of their defense happens to be pass coverage. Not him. It's the other 3 or 4 guys playing opposite him. He played outstanding last year. One of the most underrated secondary players we have in the NFL.
We talk so much about the Cowboys. 2 guys who they need to be excellent this year that we don't talk enough about. One is Byron Jones, so it's good to see him back off PUP, and the other is Taco Charlton, a former first-round pick.
Way to
be
bring
a
that
pass
together.
rusher on their off.
Yeah, we had tacos last night. We did them on Monday. We couldn't wait on LeBron.
Couldn't wait on LeBron
No,
on
we
Taco
couldn't. We did
Tuesday.
little shrimp tacos on the grill last night.
You're so
Avocado
bougie,
That is
man.
really bougie.
My God, you're bougie. Shrimp tacos with avocado
Man, we have
in Greenwich.
one hood guy on the show, and that's you. Yeah.
To the Rams now. It has been a high-octane offensive show under head coach Sean McVay. In fact, in his first 2 seasons, no team has scored more points than the Rams, and only the Patriots have more wins. But what about that dreaded Super Bowl hangover after their loss to New England? Well, McVay's not hungover, says this is the best he's ever felt going into a season. Nick, you see the Rams making another Super Bowl run?
I do not. And of any team that I would anticipate a significant drop-off as far as regular season wins, not just playoff success, from last year to this year, the Rams would be very near, if not at the top of the list. I am not nearly as bullish on their quarterback as other people appear to be. And McVay has done a really good job protecting Jared Goff from criticism. Anything about the Super Bowl he's put on himself. I didn't adjust. I wasn't prepared. I didn't know what was coming. Okay, that's all fine. But your quarterback was the #1 pick of the draft a few years ago, who was a Pro Bowl level player the last 2 years, had the opportunities to make similar adjustments, had the opportunity. He could see the field seemingly nearly as well as you could from the sideline, and he still couldn't make adjustments throughout that game. And that was the continuation of a trend for him against excellent defenses last year. Denver, Chicago, Philly, in the playoffs, Dallas and New England. Those 5 games, 0 touchdowns, 7 picks. He was one guy at full strength when the team was at full strength. He was another guy once Cooper Kupp went out. He was another guy once Kupp was out and Gurley wasn't himself. This is a big year for Jared Goff. I don't think Gurley's going to be the same all-pro level player. We know, as Coach Mangini's talked about, they lost a couple guys on the offensive line. And some of Sean McVay's trickeration, if you will, the league is starting to catch up to. So can Jared Goff be the difference maker? Can he be a top 5 NFC, forget NFL, NFC quarterback? I have legitimate questions about that. And so, no, I don't, with a less talented team than last season, I don't think they are 13 wins, close to it. I don't think they're a Super Bowl team
And
again.
Nick, how old is Coach McVay?
34, just turned 34.
I mean, he didn't play football at a high level. He should wake up every morning feeling good.
Yeah.
So how he feels getting ready for the season is irrelevant. McVay feels good. Does Jared Goff feel good?
Went to the Amalfi Coast with my man Canty, Cannes Film Festival.
Yeah, what about Ty Gurley's right knee? All right, how is that feeling? And to me, Sean McVay, the league has caught up to them and their system of what they're doing. What is Sean McVay in this critical year for Jared Goff that you call it? Now, there's something going on there in L.A. There's a reason why they haven't offered him a contract extension yet.
Correct.
Do they believe in Jared Goff? They've obviously believe in McVay because they extended him and the general manager. So we know that those two are tied moving forward. Is Jared Goff the quarterback of their future? I believe that he is. Because if you pose the question to me, Jenna, and we were talking earlier today, would you rather have Dak Prescott or Jared Goff? And I would tell you every day of the week I'm taking Jared Goff because he is a better thrower of the football down the field as far as anticipation than Dak is. So I believe that he is an NFL starting quarterback. I do believe he's only going to get better as his arm gets stronger. But some of the things that they have to be able to do is you can't have the difference in when we're in play action, I'm 20% higher in passing rating than we're not in play action. Because you can't do enough play action passes where I'm putting my back of the quarterback to the defense that much during the game. So as a pure passer, him and Sean McVay have to come up with a better first and second down regular passing attack. To me, that's on Sean McVay just as much as on Jared Goff.
And even though everyone's passer rating jumps under play action, every quarterback in the league, it's the most effective way to do it. The reason you need to be effective without play action is, as Coach was talking about earlier, on 3rd and 12, don't nobody believe your play action. When everyone knows you're passing, the play action has limited efficacy because what you're trying to make the defense believe, they say, okay, run it. Go ahead, even with Todd Gurley. You want to run it on 3rd and 12, we'll take our chances. And so that is my concern with Goff, and I think Chris's point about the contract extension is a really valid one. I know the other guys in the top 5, Jalen, Zeke, and Bosa, haven't gotten extensions yet. We'll see if Zeke does. But those guys aren't quarterbacks. The quarterback taken number 2, who's played in 0 playoff games and has been injured a couple times, he did get an extension. Goff, who's never been injured, has been to a Super Bowl, did not. And it's not because they couldn't make the money work. In fact, it would have been in their interest to get it done earlier so they could spread that cap hit out over an extra season. It is telling to me they are making him, to a degree, sing for his supper this season, despite going to the Super Bowl last year.
Two big questions on their team, Jared Goff and Todd Gurley. All right, take a break. Coming up, another big blow for Tom Brady and the Patriots. That's next on First Things First. Back here with Coach Eric Mangini. We're talking Patriots. Center David Andrews might be done for the season because of blood clots. Andrews has been New England's starting center in their last 3 Super Bowl appearances. Coach, how big of a deal is this injury for Tom Brady and that Patriots offense?
It's a significant deal. He's been a starter for 57 games. He's been the captain. And it's not just that transition, but here's the 3rd year in a row where they're transitioning left tackles. And so it was Soldier, and then it goes Trent Brown, and now it's back to Isaiah Wynn. And even though Isaiah Wynn's a first-round draft pick, he's never still
played.
Yeah, he's still a new player. He's had a pretty good preseason, but you've got to adjust to that component. So now you've got your left tackle and your center, arguably the two most important positions on the offensive line with new players. Now, that being said, you've got Dante Scarnecchia. And when you look at the Patriots' offensive line, there's one first-round draft pick, but then the rest are like college free agent, 4th, 5th, 6th rounder. They're able to create offensive linemen in New England, different than, say, like the Atlanta Falcons model, which every single player is a #1 draft pick.
Yes.
They go and generate, and that's Dante Scarnecchia. And you heard, or Dante was interviewed, and he said, look, no cavalry is coming. Nobody's coming to save the day in New England. We have who we have. I like the guys we have, and we're going to make it work. Man, I believe him because that's what he does. He turns guys into legitimate players, and he turns groups into legitimate, very successful units to protect, obviously, their most important asset.
But he's not a magician. He might be the closest thing we have to it of offensive line coaches, but at some point, the personnel downgrades matter to a degree. And your point on third straight year different left tackle, last year, Tom Brady, we saw it, and I think it was very smart. This is not a dig at all. A little more of what I would phrase almost chucking and ducking than we've seen in years past, which is rush coming, not worth taking the hit. I'm 41 years old. We're trying to play 20 games this season, play to the Super Bowl. I will get rid of the ball and get down. And by the way, that was very smart of him as he played into the Super Bowl, and they won the Super Bowl. But they now have a different left tackle than the last season. And even in Trent Brown, even if we think he got overpaid by Oakland, he played very well for them last year. They have a different center than last season, who he or Shaq Mason were in the discussion for the best offensive lineman, and no Rob Gronkowski. So you could argue the three most important people blocking on the line of scrimmage are all different and potentially all downgrades. Now, we'll see if Wynn can be better than Brown because drafted him in the first round, but he's never played in the NFL. And I would think some of what Dante Scarnecchia is so good at is taking guys you're talking about, undrafted or late drafted guys, and over a number of years developing them into these types of players. With Ted Karras, 6th-round pick from 3 years ago, they're going to be asking him to immediately step into a role he's never had, to your point, because Andrews has been so available starting every game the last couple seasons.
Yes, but before that season, I was on TV, and you know what I was saying? Their center don't have no experience because he was undrafted. Because he was undrafted. This is the prototypical New England way. Center undrafted in 15. Oh, he's going to start 3 Super Bowls for you, become a huge asset. Dante Scarnecchia, we should predict this. That line will not be a liability to them. They will come up with a game plan between Josh McDaniel and how they're going to throw the ball, how they're going to run the ball to be able to keep the heat off of Tom Brady. But I'm going to tell you, if I'm the Pittsburgh Steelers and the rest of the NFL, especially them first 4 weeks of the season, I'm getting ready to dust off every blitz that I got. You know the reason why? I ain't afraid of Josh Gordon. Dude just came out of rehab. Are you going to run past me? He going to be able to play 60 snaps? They don't have a tight end, and they don't have any other proven deep threat. So if I blitz you, is Tom going to hold on to that ball enough to let them get down the field? So for me, the first month of the season, that's how I'm trying to attack New England, Coach.
And you said that Dante's not a magician, but he magically makes multimillionaires appear. You know, and
Trent Brown, what do you do with him? That's a magician.
It's magical. And whatever amount of money that it takes to keep Dante in New England, because when was the last time their own line wasn't very successful? When Dante was retired and spending time in Rhode Island at the beach, that's the last time their line wasn't very successful. He comes back out of retirement, suddenly it all changes. And we talk about this a lot going into the season. You come out of training camp with who you hope to be, you know, and then the good teams realize who they need to be, and New England embraces who they need to be. So they'll figure out who they need to be with the new center, and they'll figure out what the strengths and weaknesses are of Isaiah Wynn, and then there will be a lot of teams that say, okay, we're going to test you with some blitzes and some different things. Okay, we'll figure out who we need to be to deal with that, and it may look ugly in September. What have we seen? New England sometimes looks ugly in September.
That's the best time to get it.
Then you figure it out, and it's not so easy as the season goes on.
But, Cris, you said something I think is interesting. You said the offensive line's not going to be a liability, and I would agree with that. But given how this team is built, given what we've talked about, the way they played the end of the regular season into the playoffs, given the lack of personnel at wide receiver, they are built like a team that might need to rely on the offensive line to be a strength, like a team that's going to try to beat you in what I would call maybe an older school style of football. A lot of running, a lot of great defense, time of possession. You can't just have your offensive line not be a liability. You need your offensive line to be an asset. Losing your center with blood clots in his lungs, how scary that is, notwithstanding, is a potentially huge problem.
But what Cris talked about...
No, we agree to that. We agree to that. But the guy who they have, the guy I sat down with last year, because Coach Mangini, the reason why I watched the offensive line is because this dude came on the show with me several years ago talking about offensive line play. My boy Dante Scarnecchia, man, they miss him. I was like, who the heck is that? and then I talked to him at this year's Super Bowl in Atlanta, sat down with him, and there are geniuses in football, and there are only a few of them playing the game. Most of them are guys just like him. People don't know their name, and they get great results because what New England showed me last year was, forget all this new NFL. We're getting ready to turn this into a street fight.
Right.
And let me tell you what's easier to train a guy. It's easier to train a big, fat, slow offensive lineman how to street fight than to be a ballet dancer, dropping him back 40, 50 times to build a pass. And that's something that New England has figured out.
And they're not going to say that we have to do this. Okay, they're going to do, like Chris's point, like we talked in the Super Bowl, they're going to do what you're weakest at. And that's going to, and that's the great thing about the approach is they can evolve each week into what they want to be, what they need to be. They're not bound by this. We have to be this.
Just quickly, the concern is if what the opposing team is weakest at is pass rush and pass coverage, do you now have the personnel to take advantage of it? Do you have the receivers on the outside? Do you have the offensive line that can hold up to drop back 35 to 40 times in a game? Look, that's the concern.
But what year have we gone into in a long time where we've said, oh, my God, New England's receivers are really dangerous this year?
It's been, well, a couple of years ago with Cooks.
Dallas made it through last year, and they lost their center, and Travis Frederick is a better center than Andrews is in New England.
Thank you for listening to the First Things First podcast. Remember, leave us a review and tell us what you think. Subscribe to the podcast on Apple Podcasts and catch us on FS1 Monday through Friday, 6:30 a.m. Eastern. For Cris Carter and Nick Wright, I'm Jenna Wolfe. So long, everybody.